Well, that was Paula Reed reporting. The president's legal team could be in court on a separate front as Democrats continue to threaten impeachment. A court filing shows House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler is asking for more documents related to Robert Mueller's investigation into Russian interference. The filing says House Democrats need it for a potential impeachment inquiry. Nancy Cortez reports from Capitol Hill.
We're crossing a threshold. Absolutely.
In a parting shot before a 6-week break, Democrats said they are stepping up their probe of the president.
I would say we are in an impeachment investigation. It could lead to articles of impeachment or it could lead to something else.
In a federal suit, the House Judiciary Committee is seeking underlying grand jury testimony from the Mueller investigation, especially material related to President Trump's knowledge of any potential criminal acts by him or his aides. The suit says the House is considering whether to exercise a constitutional power of the utmost gravity, approval of articles of impeachment.
All they want to do is impede. They want to investigate. They want to go fishing.
The move comes as some Democrats grow frustrated with the Speaker's more cautious approach to impeachment.
The decision will be made in a timely fashion.
Speaker Pelosi cleared the air with one critic, New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Looking forward to us continuing our work.
Tensions between the two over strategy and policy had grown personal in recent weeks, the two sides trading barbs in the press and online.
Do you think you were able to bury the hatchet with Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez in your meeting?
I don't think there ever was any hatchet.
Well, she called you downright disrespectful.
Well, we're in the political arena. In our caucus, we have our differences. Respect that.
And that was Nancy Cortez reporting. I want to bring in Kevin Cirelli at the White House. He's a chief Washington correspondent for Bloomberg. I see you smiling, Kevin.
Yeah.
Boy, that relationship with the two of them, huh?
Well, Nancy, absolutely asking just precisely the absolute best question there, because you had Speaker Nancy Pelosi, even in her body language and in the way she responded during that exchange, you could tell that she was someone who is very much heading into this August recess, hearing the cries of the base within her caucus. Now more than 100 Democratic House members who have openly called for impeachment. Now, with respect to Speaker Pelosi, her camp will tell you that it's precisely a more nuanced issue, the issue of impeachment. There are a handful of lawmakers like AOC, like Congresswoman Ilhan Omar and other members of the squad who are actively calling for impeachment. But there are others who are saying, look, if that's something that the Democratic caucus agrees on, that they would, of course, follow suit. But in many of these centrist districts, or districts that Democrats were able to win back in 2018 and flip them from red to blue, the issue of impeachment is not really registering at top of the list as other issues pertaining to income inequality or health care have been. And according to a Morning Consult Politico poll, only 46% of Americans now are openly calling for impeachment.
And despite that poll, House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler is taking the impeachment battle to the legal system. The White House, are they worried about that at all, about going through the courts instead of Congress?
Well, I was told yesterday by a Republican strategist who interacts frequently with the administration that they are fully prepared to take this all the way to the Supreme Court if that is where the case goes. But to take a step back and just to put it in plain speak about what this court filing does, and it's easy to get lost in the dizzying headlines, especially from Bob Mueller's testimony up on Capitol Hill earlier this week. The bottom line, House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler is filing with the courts in order to get information about the evidence that was used to assemble the Mueller report. So if he were to get that information, that could lead to essentially what's in the Mueller report. And they're hoping, from the Democratic perspective, that that would lead to impeachment. From Speaker Pelosi's perspective, she wants to take a piecemeal approach, to take this one step at a time. This is definitely the next step in the process. And from the Republican administration perspective, they're saying essentially bring it on, because they're looking at the calendar. They would like to get USMCA or NAFTA 2.0 passed. That would be another bipartisan win for this administration in the month of September. They had recently just inked the deal on a 2-year extension of the debt ceiling. So what they're putting out is business is getting done even despite the cries for impeachment from Democrats.
You mentioned the Supreme Court. I want to talk about another matter with the Supreme Court, the ruling on the wall that came down. Can you sort of explain for us what this means?
Well, essentially, what the Supreme Court ruled was that the President Trump and the administration would be able to use money from the Pentagon and from the defense community in order to build the wall. There was a massive debate up on Capitol Hill about whether or not the president was acting in his legal abilities in order to get funding for the wall through this mechanism. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of President Trump.
You remember on the campaign trail, the president promised Mexico's going to pay for the wall. You know, the Supreme Court ruling seems to confirm that money's going to come from the Defense Department's budget. Is the White House worried at all about how Democrats might use this in the campaign?
No, that issue is an important one. But in terms of, to answer your question directly about why the answer is no, is because Democrats don't want the wall built. So the president making the calculation that by building the wall, regardless of who will pay for it, that he'll be able to say that he was able to do that. But on the issue of who to pay for it, I mean, look, the Freedom Caucus voted against the debt ceiling bill earlier this week. They were essentially a non-player in this, but there are still many folks in the conservative ideological circles who are very concerned about government funding, about government spending, rather, and government waste. So, you know, I think that in the long term, this could be talked about in conservative circles about as far as the issue goes for government spending. But as of right now, no.
I want to also ask you about the so-called safe third country agreement in Guatemala. Why did the Trump administration push for it? Does it expect legal backlash?
Yes, there could potentially be legal backlash, and the reason why they have pushed for this is essentially they feel that in order to deal with countries like Guatemala, that they will be able to continue to try to go on the offense in terms of issuing deterrences for immigrants who are considering coming to the United States. And that has been something that I think that you've seen the administration suggest that they're willing to do no matter which country is there. And you saw that the administration threatened from an economic angle by using tariffs. Tariffs are incredibly unpopular, not just amongst the business community in Washington, D.C. and on Wall Street and Main Street, but also from the perspective of other countries as well.
And Kevin, before you go, Iran, I want to ask you, a U.S. military official says that the country fired a medium-range ballistic missile on Wednesday. The official confirmed that it didn't pose a threat to the U.S. You actually spoke to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo about Iran this weekend. I want to play that interview for you.
Would you go to Tehran?
Sure. If that's the call, happily go there.
And would you appear on Tehran television?
I would welcome the chance to speak directly to the Iranian people. I've talked about this before. Zarif gets to come here. He comes to New York. He drives around in the most wonderful city in America, and he speaks to the media. He talks to the American public. Gets to put Iranian propaganda out into the American airwaves. I'd like a chance to go not do propaganda, but speak the truth to the Iranian people about what it is their leadership has done and how it has harmed Iran. I think the reason they won't permit that to happen is because they know the truth as well.
And we know the truth. The relationship is so sour. Kevin, where do you see this headed?
Well, 3 quick points. First and foremost, President Trump and Secretary Pompeo are saying that these economic sanctions, a maximum economic pressure campaign placed upon Iran, is trying to force them to come to some type of negotiation table, whether it be the U.S. or at the UN. The second point is that in terms of the political landscape here in Washington, D.C., Democrats and Republicans are in agreement that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon, but the disagreement lies in how to achieve that goal. And third and finally, Secretary Pompeo, in my interview with him for Bloomberg earlier this week, alluding to Foreign Minister of Iran, Zarif, who recently traveled to the United Nations in, of course, New York City, and appeared on a host of different U.S. media platforms. The secretary was essentially saying that the U.S. can also engage in interviews in Tehran, and that he would be willing to take that American case directly to the Tehran people and directly to all Iranians in Iran.
All right, Kevin Cirelli, great interview. Thank you very much for joining us, Kevin.
Thank you.
You bet.